It's 11 p.m. on a Sunday, and you're lying in bed doing the thing you swore you wouldn't do, scrolling. And there it is. Somebody you went to high school with, standing in an infinity pool that drops off into the ocean, captioned, "We only get one life." Your thumb stops. Something in your chest tightens, and before you fully decided anything, you've opened a travel app, the dates are picked, and there's a friendly little button that says, "Reserve now, pay over time." Here's the part nobody tells you. That photo you're jealous of, there's a decent chance the person in it is more broke than you are. They didn't pay for that pool. A payment plan did, and the trip they're calling priceless is going to show up on a credit card statement for the next 11 months. This isn't a video about whether you should travel, it's a video about a trap. One disguised so well that we've started thanking it for robbing us. Let me show you the math. My name is Nick, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time thinking about where regular people's money quietly disappears to. If you've ever come home from a well-deserved break and felt vaguely poor for months, hit subscribe and drop a like. Because today, we're pulling apart the most socially protected overspending in America, vacations. Before we dive in, let me be crystal clear about something. I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice. I'm also not here to tell you to never leave your house. I love a good trip. What I'm going to do is run the real numbers on something we've all agreed by unspoken cultural treaty to never run numbers on. Because every other category of spending gets scrutinized. You'll agonize over a $9 streaming subscription, but a $6,000 trip. We earned it. And that little exemption is exactly where the trap lives. Let me introduce you to two people because they're going to walk through this whole thing with us, Ross and Rachel. Mid-30s, married, no kids yet. He's in logistics. She does HR combined. They pull about $95,000 a year. They're not reckless. They've got a 401k each, a little emergency fund, the whole responsible starter kit, and every year, like clockwork, they take one big trip. This year it was Tulum. Hold on to them. We'll check in as we go. Let's start with what people are actually spending because the numbers are genuinely a little unhinged. When Empower surveyed Americans about travel in 2025, the average person said they expected to spend around $10,600 on trips that year. $10,600. Let me say that again, because it's easy to let a number like that slide past you. The average American planned to spend more than 10 grand on vacations in a single year. Other surveys land lower, somewhere around 5,000 per household. But here's the thing, even the low end is enormous. For a household on the median income of around $80,000, that's somewhere between 6 and 14% of your entire gross income before taxes going to a category that, as we'll see, gives you almost nothing back that lasts. And where does it go? Roughly 40% to lodging, where the average US hotel night now runs over $160, another 30 to 45% just getting there. The average domestic round-trip flight hit about $400. The rest is food and activities, which is a polite word for the $40 you'll spend renting 2 beach chairs and an umbrella you'll use for like 90 minutes. Now here's the part that should make you sit up. This is all getting more expensive fast. You know, in early 2026, airfares were up more than 20% compared to the year before. 20%. That's the first time airfares jumped that hard since the post-pandemic chaos. Hotels up, food up. Your wages, meanwhile, doing their usual impression of a sloth climbing a grease pole. So no, you're not imagining it. The trip you took 5 years ago genuinely costs dramatically more now, and the whole gap is coming straight out of you. But expensive isn't the trap. Expensive is just expensive. Here's where it actually becomes a trap. A huge chunk of people aren't paying for these trips with money they have. They're paying with money they're hoping to have later. According to Bankrate, around a third of summer travelers plan to take on debt just to make the trip happen. And the really uncomfortable stat, in that same Empower survey, 13% of Americans admitted they dipped into retirement savings to fund a vacation. Read that one twice. 1 in 8 people reached into the account that's supposed to keep them off cat food at age 75 so they could go to the beach this year. So back to Ross and Rachel. Tulum ran them about $6,200 all in. Flights, the nice resort, the dinners, the catamaran day. They didn't have $6,200 sitting in cash, so they did what the booking screen gently suggested and split it. 8 months later, it's still sitting on a card at 22%, and the line item on the statement just says airline/hotel, like the bank is too polite to remind them what it was for. And they're the rule, not the exception. NerdWallet found that of the people who put last summer's trip on a credit card, 74% didn't pay it off right away. Over a third, 35%, still hadn't paid it off a full year later. They were literally booking this year's vacation while still carrying last year's. That's not a vacation. That's a timeshare of regret with no off season. And that interest at 22% dragged out the way most people drag it out. Ross and Rachel's $6,200 trip quietly becomes closer to $8,000 by the time it's gone. You know what that means. They paid $8,000 to experience 6. Congratulations, you've invented the world's worst exchange rate. Then there's the new flavor of this, the one your parents never had to resist. Buy now, pay later for travel. Companies like Affirm, Klarna, and Uplift have wormed their way right into the booking screen so that at the exact emotional peak, when you can already taste the pina colada, there's a button offering to split it into 4 cute little payments. Nearly 1 in 5 travelers now plans to finance a trip this way. And here's the tell. Affirm has bragged to merchants that travelers using these plans spend an average of 48% more. Uplift says its customers spend around 22% more. That's not a feature for you, that's a confession. The whole point of the friendly button is to get you to spend money you wouldn't have spent if you'd had to feel the full price at once. 4 easy payments. Congratulations, you've turned a 1-week vacation into a subscription. And the kicker? Nearly half of buy now, pay later users have paid late in the past year. So the tool sold as responsible flexibility is, for a lot of people, just a slower way to be late on a debt you took on for a week you barely remember. And let me tell you what that actually feels like, because the stat doesn't capture it. It feels like getting home, dropping the bags in the hallway, and immediately feeling a little worse than before you left. It feels like the September statement landing while your tan's already gone. It feels like booking next year's trip, not because you're excited, but because everyone keeps asking where you're headed, and nowhere, I'm still paying off the last one, isn't an acceptable answer at the barbecue. The trip ends in a week. The financing ends whenever the bank decides it's gotten enough out of you. Okay, let's take a breath, because so far this just sounds like a spending problem. It's not. It's a psychology problem, and this is the part that should actually make you a little angry once you see it. You know the phrase experiences over things? That comes from real research. Psychologists genuinely found that dollar for dollar, experiences tend to make people happier than stuff because experiences become part of who you are and stuff just sits in your garage depreciating. That's good science. And then the travel industry got its hands on it and turned it into a weapon. For 15 years now, every airline ad, every cruise commercial, every booking site has been marinated in this language. To collect moments, not things. Memories last forever. You only live once. Every one of those phrases is engineered to do exactly one job and switch off the part of your brain that does arithmetic. A clinical psychologist put it perfectly. On vacation, money starts to feel like monopoly money. You're in luxury mode, so you just say yes. Yes to the upgrade, yes to the excursion, yes to the $40 cocktails, because surely that's not the real you spending. That's vacation you, and vacation you has earned this. And then there's the phone. A 2025 study found nearly 74% of people now pick their destinations based on social media. Not because they always dreamed of Bali, but because they saw someone else there. Forbes advisor found that 44% of travelers admitted bumping up their budget after seeing other people's posts. Among Gen Z, it was 79%. Nearly 8 in 10 young people spending more than they planned, to chase a feeling they got from a stranger's highlight reel. This is what makes vacation spending different from every other kind. You would never justify a $4,000 couch you couldn't afford. you'd feel ridiculous. But a $4,000 trip you can afford, that's self-care. That's giving the kids memories. The industry took the language of meaning and used it to pry open wallets that should have stayed shut. They're not selling you a flight, they're selling you permission. Now, before we go on, we still haven't gotten to the most expensive mistake on this whole list, the one people don't stumble into, the one they sign up for voluntarily with a pen. Hold that thought, because first you need to see the smaller leaks. Let's talk about the costs hiding underneath the sticker price, because the number you see when you book is almost never the number you pay. Resort fees. Remember when those were a weird Vegas thing? Now they're everywhere. A survey of 160 hotels found resort fees averaging around $33 a night, and at some big chains, $50 a night for amenities like the pool you assumed was, just part of the hotel. All-inclusive resorts run the same play in reverse. The pitch is everything's covered. The reality is the good restaurant costs extra, the good liquor costs extra. The spa is $200 a session. The excursions are separate, and one frequent traveler described booking a $500 a night ocean view suite that came out to over $700 a night once the all-inclusive resort finished deciding what it actually felt like including cruises. Fares on some lines jumped over 40% in a single year, and the cruise companies are openly telling investors they're raising prices because they can. And then there's the final boss of this entire genre, the timeshare. The average one costs nearly $25,000 up front, plus a maintenance fee averaging around $1,500 a year, a fee that rose 17% in a single year and never ever stops. And the resale value? Even premium timeshares resell for maybe 15% of what you paid. The single most common resale price is $0. People can't even give them away because whoever takes it inherits that forever fee. Think about that. You've managed to buy the only asset on earth that costs money to give away. A timeshare isn't a vacation property. It's a subscription to a place you'll visit less and less that you can't cancel and can't sell. Oh, and that travel rewards card, the one you basically make money with, more than 7 in 10 people carrying credit card debt are still chasing points. Cardholders spend an average of around $2,400 a year specifically to earn rewards, and roughly 1 in 3 Americans have never even redeemed them. The points feel like savings. Statistically, they're an accelerant. They're the casino chips of personal finance, engineered to stop feeling like real money right at the moment you hand it over. All right, here's the section. Nobody in the travel industry wants you anywhere near. A calculator. Let's do this through Ross and Rachel, because abstract numbers slide off the brain. Say they keep doing what they're doing, 1 trip a year in the 5,000 to 6,000 range. We'll call it 5,000 to be generous. Now imagine instead they took that $5,000 every year and put it in a plain index fund earning about 8%, which is below the long-run stock market average. After 30 years, that becomes about $566,000. Let me say that slowly. Their annual trip, the one nobody in their life would ever question, is quietly the difference between Ross and Rachel paying off their house at 55 and still making payments on it at 70. Same income, same jobs, one habit, and if they ran at the actual national average, that 10,600 number, and invested it instead, they'd be looking at roughly $1.2 million. That's not skip your latte money, that's retire or don't money. Here's the way I want you to carry this around. One single $5,000 trip taken at 30, invested instead, and left alone until 60, becomes around $50,000. So your week in the sun isn't costing you $5,000. It's costing your future self $50. Whatever a trip costs, mentally multiply it by 10. A $4,000 getaway is really a $40,000 decision charged to the older, tireder version of you who's going to need it a lot more than you need a swim-up bar. Now, and this matters, some of those trades are absolutely worth it. I'm getting to that. But the conversation we normally have, "Oh, it's just a few grand, you can afford it" one, that conversation is mathematically illiterate, and now you can't unsee it. Because here's where it gets almost cruel. If expensive vacations at least made us proportionally happier, you could defend the math. They don't. The landmark study here tracked over 1,500 people. The finding: yes, vacationers were happier than non-vacationers, but mostly because of anticipation, the looking forward part before they ever left. And after the trip, in general, people who'd gone on vacation were no happier than people who hadn't gone at all. The boost in study after study fades within somewhere between a few days and a month. Researchers literally call it the fade out effect. This is the hedonic treadmill, and you've lived it. Day 1 on the beach is magic. Day 3, it's nice. Day 6, you're checking your work email and thinking about the laundry waiting at home. Your brain recalibrates to paradise scarily fast. And the most expensive part? The data suggests pricier trips don't reliably make you happier than cheaper ones. What actually predicts a happiness boost is whether the trip was genuinely relaxing, who you were with, and whether you truly unplugged. A $12,000 overwater bungalow and a $1,200 cabin in the woods produce, on average, about the same fade out. The travel industry has been charging you a luxury premium on happiness that the research says doesn't exist. Now, let me keep my promise, because I am not telling you to never travel. The opposite, actually. But first, I can already hear the two objections because I get them in the comments of every video I make about spending. First, "But Nick, you can't take it with you. Tomorrow isn't promised." Fair hit. Hoarding every dollar until you're 80 and too tired to use it is its own kind of trap. The person who dies with $2 million in the bank and the spending habits of a church mouse didn't win anything either. But notice what that objection quietly assumes, that the only two options are finance a luxury trip you can't afford or never go anywhere. That's a false choice the travel industry is thrilled for you to believe. Second, travel is educational for my kids, also fair, but the research says it's the relaxation, the novelty, and the people you're with that do the work, not the price tag or the passport stamps. A national park and a tank of gas teaches a kid plenty. The answer was never stop living. It's stop confusing the price of a trip with the value of one. And the data is shockingly clear on where that value comes from. The health research is real and it's good. Regular vacations are linked to lower stress, better mood and energy, less burnout, and one long-running study even tied frequent vacations to lower mortality risk in men at high heart disease risk. So vacations absolutely can work. The data just tells you exactly when. They work when the trip is actually restful, not a packed, stressful Instagram checklist death march. They work when you can pay for it without debt. Because the moment you add interest payments and that 6 months later financial hangover, the happiness benefit reliably evaporates. They work when they're frequent and modest rather than rare and extravagant. Several small breaks beat one giant blowout. They work when they're social with people you love, and they work when they're novel. Notice what's not on that list. Expensive, 5-star, exotic. None of those predict happiness. They just predict a bigger bill. So here's the framework I'd actually use. I call it the 5-3-10 rule, and it's a filter you can run on any trip in about 30 seconds. 5. Cap your total annual travel spending, everything, flights, hotels, food, every last fee, at 5% of your gross income. Make 80 grand. That's $4,000 a year all in. Can't make the trip fit? The trip's too expensive. Pick a different place, a different season, a different format. The destination is negotiable. Your future isn't. 3. If you can't pay the whole thing off within 3 months of booking in actual cash, not once the bonus comes in, you can't afford it yet. And if a buy now, pay later button is anywhere near the transaction, that's your answer right there. 10. Before you book, multiply the price by 10. That's roughly what that money becomes if you invest it instead and leave it for 30 years. So you're not deciding whether a trip is worth $5,000. You're deciding whether it's worth 50. Sometimes the honest answer is yes. Often it isn't. A few quick moves that fall out of that. Travel in the shoulder season and pay 10 to 20% less for the exact same trip. Drive instead of fly when you can. $200 of gas versus 2,000 in airfare for a family of 4. Book somewhere with a kitchen because food is the single most controllable cost there is. Walk straight out of the timeshare presentation. The free breakfast is the bait. And use rewards if you want, but never ever spend $1 to earn a point. So here's where we land. The vacation trap isn't one bad decision. It's a cultural agreement we all quietly signed that travel alone among all spending gets to skip the math. That we earned it outranks we can't afford it. That memories somehow carry infinite return on investment. The data just doesn't back any of that up. What it backs up is something quieter and far more useful. The right trip, paid for in cash, taken with people you love, somewhere you can actually exhale, is genuinely one of the best things you'll ever spend money on. And the wrong trip, financed, performative, stressful, still haunting your statement in November, is one of the most reliably destructive moves in personal finance, precisely because it's wearing the costume of the good one. And listen, if you've done this, if you're Ross or Rachel right now with last year's trip still on a card, I need you to hear this clearly. You're not bad with money. You're not undisciplined. You went up against 15 years and $1 billion of marketing built by people whose entire job is to make a moment of restraint feel like deprivation. Of course it got you. It was designed to. Seeing the machine is the whole game, and you just did. So Ross and Rachel, next year, they go. Of course they go. But it's a long weekend in a cabin they paid for in cash with the people they actually wanted to see. And the difference between that and Tulum goes into the account that pays off the house at 55. Same joy. None of the hangover. Spend the money you have. Skip the money you don't. Take the trip you can actually pay for and invest the difference. Because 30 years from now, that difference is a house. And the next time you're lying in bed at 11 p.m., thumb hovering over reserve now, pay over time, just remember the photo never includes the credit card statement. If this helped, hit like, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments. What's the most you've ever regretted spending on a trip? I'll see you in the next one.